Good morning. My name is Lynette Dillon. Today we are going to discuss the apple crop in the state of Pennsylvania. Before we do that, though, let's go over the participation window that we have. First of all, this webinar will be recorded. It will be available for viewing in the next 24 hours, along with the fact sheet will be available at that time. Participants are muted during this webinar. If you have any questions whatsoever, I would encourage you to click in the question box, and when you're done typing, click the button to send the question. As I said, my name is Lynette Dillon. I am the Director of Training and Education. I supervise national training activities, and I also oversee the NCS Training and Education Committee, along with the NCS Crop Adjuster Proficiency Program. I started working in crop insurance in 1984 and I worked in an underwriting training capacity for 5 crop insurance companies before I joined National Crop Insurance Services about 10 years ago. One of my favorite things about crop insurance that nothing ever stays the same. Procedures, handbooks, new crop insurance programs are always being added. One of my interests is I love to travel all over the world. As I said, our webinar's topic today will be apples in the state of Pennsylvania. So let's get started. Our primary focus today will be to provide everyone with information on apples to help manage your risk. Also to learn how to engage the services of a crop insurance agent. Towards the very end of our webinar today, we're going to present some general crop health information pertaining to apples. What I found out when researching apples in the state of Pennsylvania, it's very similar to tree fruits such as pears and peaches, and the crop hail is pretty much the same also. Today, we're also going to present general crop insurance basic information. This is done to help you understand that if you don't have a policy, what would be needed for signing an application and just a little bit of information on the common crop insurance policy. The common crop insurance policy is the main policy for all the crops in the United States. So there are several issues that we probably need to discuss so you know what the expectation is. Our webinar highlights today will be to introduce the crop, go through some definitions. We do want to go through, like I said, the general crop basics and hit on the basic provision highlights. We'll discuss the available coverage levels for apples along with the reporting requirements. There's some additional endorsements that are available for apples that I want to discuss. And then, of course, we'll zero in on the crop health information for apples. Like I said, that's very, very similar to tree fruits. All right, so first thing we're going to do this morning is dig right into what's available for apples. As far as the apple crop goes, there are 2 intended uses for apples. First of all, there is a fresh and there's a processing apple. And those are the 2 types that you can insure on your acreage report. As far as practices go, there are 4 different types of practices. We see in the documents that are available on the Risk Management Agency website, the practices include irrigated, non-irrigated, certified organic, and of course, certified transitional. Now, if you don't see a type or practice on this screen and you might have something different, you can always consult a crop insurance agent about the availability of coverage through a written agreement. Now, as far as crop types, there are several, or actually there are 5 different crop types. We're going to talk this morning about a varietal group A, B, and C, along with fresh and processing. So let's jump right in as talk about the varietal group A. Now, when I talk about these varietal groups, I'm getting my information directly from the crop provisions and the special provisions. And again, that's available on the Risk Management Agency website under their tools portion of their website. So as far as varietal group A goes, there are 3 types of insurable varieties. I found Honeycrisp, Pizzazz, and Sweet Tangle. One thing you need to know that the varietal group A, and this also goes for varietal group B that I'll show here in just a moment, they will include all the commercially recognized selections and brand names, mutations, or sports, but they do not include hybrids created by crosses between the stated varieties and any other varieties. Group B has quite a few more type of varieties. We find Cortland, Empire, Fuji, Gala, Jonagold, Makun, McIntosh, and then of course you can see the other types in the second column include the Ozark Gold, Paula Red, Pink Ladies, Red Rome, Ruby Frost, Snapdragon, and Zestar. Now, like I said, this same statement is found in the special provisions and it's exactly the same as the varietal group A, where they include all the commercially recognized selection of brand names, mutations, or sports, but does not include the hybrids created by the crosses between these varieties and any other varieties. Varietal group C is a little different. The insurable varieties here are all other apple varieties not specified in group B or group A if that's applicable. All right, let's take a look at what fresh apple production actually means and the guidelines for fresh production. Fresh apple production are sold or could be sold for human consumption without undergoing any change in the basic form. And those changes in the basic form include peeling, juicing, crushing, etc. Also, it's from acreage as designated as fresh apples on your acreage report that follow the recommended cultural practices generally in use for fresh apple acreage in the area in a manner generally recognized by ag experts. And this one down here is fresh apple production from certified acreage. You need to provide verifiable records to support that at least 50% of the production from acreage reported as fresh apple acreage from each unit was sold as fresh apples in one or more of the 4 most recent crop years. Processing apple production, these are apples from insurable acreage that fails to meet the insurability requirement for fresh apple production that are sold or could be sold for the purpose of undergoing a change to the basic structure, again, such as peeling, juicing, crushing, or from acreage designated as processing apples on your acreage report. That's when you decide that, hey, I'm going to just insure this as processing apples on my acreage report. There are some apple crop definitions that you need to know about. I'm going to go over the bin one. The bin is a container that contains a minimum of 875 pounds of apples or another quantity. As far as box goes, this is a container that contains 35 pounds of apples or another quantity. Bushels are in all states except Colorado, 42 pounds of apples. Direct marketing, this is the sale of the insured crop. This is directly to consumers. This is without the intervention of an intermediary such as a wholesaler, retailer, packer, a processor, shipper, buyer, or broker. Some examples of direct marketing could include selling through an on-farm or roadside stand, maybe a farmer's market, and it could be permitting the general public to enter the field for the purpose of picking all or a portion of that crop. As far as harvest goes, this is the picking of mature apples from the trees or collecting those mature apples from the ground. Remember that apples collected from the ground cannot be sold for human consumption and they will not be considered harvested. As far as marketable goes, this is apple production that's not damaged apple production. Russeting and sunburn I found in the crop provisions. Russeting is a defect on the surface of the apple as described in the grade standards. Now, as far as grade standards goes, this is United States standards for the grades of apples, the United States standards for grades of apples for processing or such other standards. This is also contained in the special provisions. And last but certainly not least, sunburn is a defect as described in the standard, in the grade standards. All right, so that's a little bit of background on some apple crop definitions that popped out that I thought would be good to know before we move on in our webinar today. Unit division guidelines. Now, let's talk about basic units a little bit. Basic units is something that everybody is entitled to. Basic units usually are a little bit cheaper than optional units. So let's review what basic units are. This includes all your insurable apple acreage in the county in which you have a 100% share, or which is owned by one person and operated by another person on shares. So you could have one basic unit for your 100% share, and then if Joe Farmer owns something and you operate it, that could be a separate basic unit. Now you could get optional units. One thing I want to say about optional units is that they are a little bit more expensive, but each and every optional unit stands on its own as far as a claim or loss payment. So you could establish optional units if you can provide separate records for each unit. You could establish optional units by, first of all, non-contiguous land or the Farm Service Agency farm serial numbers. You could do it by practice such as irrigated or non-irrigated, or by type. And we've talked about fresh, processing, varietal group A, B, or C. So you could divide a unit into optional units by type. However, remember, you cannot establish an optional unit for type fresh, which is this right here, in combination with an optional unit for a type identified as a varietal group in the actuarial documents. So for each unit for which you qualify, you may not report type fresh if you also report a type identified as a varietal group. As far as a crop insured, all apples in a county are insurable if a premium rate is provided, you have a share, or that are grown on tree varieties that are adapted to the area, or acreage has produced at least 150 bushels per acre in one of the past 4 years. They're grown for fresh production or processing apple production, that are grown in an orchard that if inspected is considered acceptable by us. So if you don't have a apple policy right now, you sign a new application by November 20th, chances are the crop insurer would come out and make an inspection in that orchard before they assign coverage. As far as county availability goes, apple coverage is available in 37 counties in the state of Pennsylvania. Like I said before, you could get a written agreement if you meet specific criteria, so you would need to contact a crop insurance agent to get that figured out. And also, you would have to talk to a crop insurance agent to see where that apple coverage is available, or you could go to the Risk Management Agency website. Again, they have that information under their tools product. Let's talk about the only plan of insurance available for apples. And this is exactly the same as I found for like pears and peaches. So the only type of, or the only plan of insurance available is the actual production history. This is Plan 90. This is the oldest crop insurance product that we have. This provides protection against a loss in yield due to nearly all unavoidable natural occurring events. It guarantees a yield based on your actual production history. The insurance guarantee is calculated by multiplying the approved average yield per acre by the coverage level that you select. So we're going to take a look here in a few slides as far as available coverage levels. The indemnity may be due if production is less than the guaranteed amount. And remember, one thing about apples is that the price elections are established by the Risk Management Agency. And we'll go over the 2020 price elections today so you have some sort of idea of what the Risk Management Agency establishes. The actual production history plan applies to crops that do not have revenue coverage available. So those sort of crops that don't have revenue coverage available are obviously apples, like cabbage, cigar filler tobacco. We see forage production, peaches and pears, oats, grapes. Those sort of plants use this actual production history plan, or what we call Plan 90. So the producer, or your actual production history, is simply the yield produced on a particular piece of ground. This is insured as a unit that we just talked about over the last 4 to 10 years. An average of these historical yields are used to calculate the insurance guarantees. As far as coverage level goes, you have a choice between 50 to 75% in 5% increments. The coverage level sets your deductible. So if you select 75% coverage level, the deductible is 25%. So any cover loss greater than 25% results in a loss payment. All right, important dates for apples include the sales closing, or what we also call the cancellation date. That is November 20th. That's right around the corner here in a couple months. Our production and acreage reporting date is January 15th. The premium billing is August 15th of next year. The contract change date is August 31st. And I mentioned the contract change date because that is the final date that the risk management agency can make any changes to the program. So between August 31st and November 20th of next year, you have some time to make a decision whether you're going to renew your policy or if you're going to cancel by the November 20th date. So that's the importance of the contract change date. And the end of the insurance period, or the end of insurance date, is November 5th. All right, let's talk about those apple price elections at this point. So as an insured, you can select only one price selection for all the apples in the county insured under the policy, unless the special provisions provide different price selections by type. So in the case of Pennsylvania, they do allow you to pick a different price selection by type. So the price election that you choose for each type must have the same percentage relationship to the maximum price offered by type. So for example, if you choose 100% of the maximum price selection for one type, you must also choose 100% of the maximum price selection for all other types that you might have. Remember that an established price is used to calculate your premium and your indemnity. Contract pricing options are available for certified organic crops grown under guaranteed contracts. So let's talk a little bit about what the 2020 pricing and what that includes. So I found out for varietal group B, which is the group that has the most types of apples available, and this is for both irrigated and non-irrigated for fresh, that established price is $15. For varietal group A, which is the one with only 3 different types available, again for fresh, irrigated, and non-irrigated, the established price is $37, and it would be $11 for the varietal group C. Now, if you just choose to insure as fresh, that would be $12.50, and processing is $3.45. The above prices that I just talked about are also available, are also for the certified organic and transitional acreage. Let's now move into causes of loss for apples. As far as causes of loss, as mentioned just a little bit ago, adverse weather conditions, that would include hail, frost, freeze, wind, drought, excess moisture, and also, as far as apples goes, excess sun causing sunburn is also included in the causes of loss. The failure of irrigation water supply, if that's caused by an insured peril during the insurance period. Fire is also included unless weeds and other forms of undergrowth had not been controlled or the pruning debris have not been removed from the orchard. Insects, but not damage due to insufficient or improper application of pest control measures. Plant disease, but not damage due to insufficient or improper application of disease control measures. And of course, we have the earthquake, volcanic eruption, and wildlife. In addition to the causes of loss that I just talked about, we will not insure against damage or loss of production due to any inability to market the apples for any reason other than the actual physical damage from an insurable cause. For example, we're not going to pay you an indemnity if you're unable to market due to quarantine, boycott, or refusal of any person to accept the production. Some duties in the event of damage or loss include the notice of loss. So if a loss occurs, you need to notify your crop insurance agent, first of all, within 72 hours of initial discovery of damage. If you previously gave notice of crop damage, you also need to provide notice at least 15 days before the beginning of harvest to claim an indemnity, or at least 3 days before the date harvest should have started if the crop will not be harvested. Remember to always leave representative samples in the field. All right, let's talk about the insurance period, kind of switching pace here a little bit. As far as the insurance period goes, for brand new insureds, coverage begins on or after November 21st. Remember I said if you're brand new insured, chances are you're going to have your orchard inspected. And once that orchard is inspected, they're either going to cover that or probably have a discussion with you if something else comes up or they find a problem with it. So that's the reason why they say coverage begins on or after that November 21st date. For carryover insureds, coverage begins on the day immediately following the end of the insurance period for the previous crop year. Remember, for all insureds, coverage ends with the earliest occurrence of one of the following, which could be total destruction of the crop, harvest of that insured crop, final adjustment of a claim, abandonment of the crop, or that November 5th end of insurance period. All right, so I just introduced a lot of the specifics of the apple policy to you, and this is from the apple crop provisions and also from the special provisions. Now, let's move out just a little bit and go to a little bit different level, a different topic here. Let's talk about the relationship between the Risk Management Agency, which is the acronym, RMA is the acronym for them, improved insurance providers, of course, agents, and you, the farmer. First of all, let's talk about Risk Management Agency and FCIC and the role they play in making all this work in offering crop insurance. The FCIC's role is to establish provisions, rules, regs, and rates. The Risk Management Agency, again, I talk a lot about the Risk Management Agency during the webinar because they do have a public website, and everything that I'm talking about on this webinar is available through that public website. The Risk Management Agency oversees the crop insurance program. They administer the discounts, they provide support and outreach. As far as the approved insurance providers go, they contract with licensed agents, they market the crop insurance, and the agent receives commission. As far as the role of the agent, they provide product and premium information to the insured. They also they collect the required information, which means they collect the application, acreage report, and production report, and they also build relationships with you, the farmer. They are required to stay current on the crop insurance program. They have to get a certain number of hours of training each and every year on any changes to program forms or procedures. Now, you, the farmer, has ownership in the crop. You enter into a contract to insure it. You must report the required information and pay all the premiums and fees that go along with that contract. You are required to follow the appropriate farming practice. You need to notify your agent in the event of a loss, and you'll receive an indemnity payment when the insurable loss occurs if the guarantee is not met. Now, I've talked several times today about that crop insurance agent. Let's figure out how to actually locate one in your area. This is the RMA website, and this is the actual website address if you want to write that down, because like I said, everything I'm talking about can be found under the tools option here, or the policy and procedure option where you'll find the policy. But for right now, we're talking about how to find an agent. It's very simple. Up here in the upper right corner, you see something called Find an Agent. If you click on that, you'll go to a screen that looks like this, and it's called the Agent Locator screen. Right here in the middle page, you can click on the RMA Agent Locator, and this screen that pops up will allow you to search by distance, crop, language, or the agent name. All right, let's talk about some basic provision highlights. This is also known as the Common Crop Insurance Policy. This is the policy that is by far, or the one that's used for every single crop in the United States that's sold. You have the Common Crop Insurance Policy, you have the crop provisions, and then of course the special provisions of insurance, which are by far the most specific and will give you the details needed for each crop type and state. All right, so as far as the common crop insurance policy, if you never had a policy before and you're going to fill an application with an agent, here are the next few slides will show you some of the specific issues that you'll need to be aware of and information that you'll need to give to your agent. And the first one is called person type. So in order to obtain insurance, you must report the correct person type along with the correct Social Security or tax ID number. Some examples of person types are individuals. And if you're married, you have to report your spouse. That is a requirement through the federal government. If you're in a partnership or a corporation, you'll have to report those persons involved with the partnership or corporation. Now, there are many other person types available. We have trust, like such as a revocable trust or irrevocable trust. We have not-for-profit. There are many other person types available. So each person type requires either a Social Security number or an employer identification number, and those will need to be reported. Now, in addition to person types, we also have something called substantial beneficial interest. The acronym for that is SBI. So by sales closing date for all insureds, all persons with an interest of at least 10% in the insured must be listed along with their identification numbers. Now, don't get this mixed up by other persons sharing in the crop. This is other persons involved with the person type. So for example, if you are married and report a spousal person type, you will have to report the spousal Social Security number. If you're involved in a partnership, you'll report the partnership's tax ID number, and then you'll also report those two people who make up the partnership. You'll have to report their Social Security number. If you're involved in a corporation, you'll report the tax ID number for the corporation, but you'll report all those persons involved in the corporation and their Social Security number. Now, the thing about that is applications that do not contain the persons with the substantial beneficial interest, along with their ID numbers, will not be accepted and no insurance will be provided. So that's a very important step of completing the application process. In addition to that, you also need your AD 1026 form. This is the conservation compliance form. You must comply with the highly erodible land conservation and wetland provisions to be eligible for any premium discounts. We'll talk about those premium discounts here on another slide and how they relate to the coverage level that you choose. So the Form AD 1026 must be on file with your local FSA on or before the premium billing date for your crop insurance policy. Remember, the premium billing date is next August. You must be in compliance, and that covers all land in all states and counties in which you have an interest in. Now you can check your status by asking your crop insurance agent to verify that you're in compliance, or you can contact your local FSA. Now, it's very important that you check your status before you purchase a policy. Because you may not be eligible for a premium discount if you do not have an AD 1026 on file with your local FSA. If you're not eligible for a premium discount and you purchase a policy, you will be responsible for all the premium costs if you still wish to purchase a crop insurance policy. Now, on the average, the USDA pays 62% of premium costs. So without that premium discount, you would pay 100% of the premium cost. So that's the reason why it's very important to follow up with your crop insurance agents to confirm your AD 1026 status. Let's also talk about record retention. You must retain complete records of planting, replants, inputs, production, harvesting, and disposition of your crop on each unit for 3 years after the end of the insurance period, or after, I should say, after the end of the crop year. The insurance provider, along with any employee of USDA, has the right to examine the insured crop and all records related to that crop. We've talked a little bit about organic crops because I said certified organic and certified transitional are one of the insurable practices. So on this slide, we dig a little bit deeper into organic crops. First of all, crop insurance is provided for organic farming practice if it's specified on the actuarial table. And for the state of Pennsylvania, it is specified in the majority of those 37 counties. The following acreage is insurable: the certified organic acreage, along with the transitional acreage being converted to certified organic, and that buffer zone acreage is also insurable. You must have a written organic certificate in effect from a certifying agent indicating the name of the entity insured, the effective date of certification, certificate numbers, and the types of commodities certified. One thing I will say about the common crop insurance policy is that normally it has provisions for late and preventive planting. This is for apples, so just letting you know that the late and preventive planting provisions of the basic provisions are not applicable to apples. All right, let's talk about coverage levels. So here is a chart showing coverage levels and premium discounts. The premium discount percentages and the available coverage levels for apples are shown. Your share of the premium is 100% minus the premium discount amount. So here the coverage levels range from 50 through 75% of your average yield and are subsidized as shown. So for example, an average actual production history of 600 bushels per acre would result in a guarantee of 300 bushels per acre if you insured at the 50% coverage level. You may choose different coverage levels for fresh and processing apples. So here's the premium discount, and this chart down here on the last row shows your premium share. So that's the reason why it's very important to know your AD 1026 status. Otherwise, you will not be entitled to this premium discount. All right, let's take a look at the reporting requirements. You're required to report certain paperwork with your agent by deadlines. So we're going to discuss the requirements for application, production reporting, and acreage reporting. So as far as the application process goes, it is fairly detailed, and I would encourage you to spend some time with your agent. It must be completed and signed no later than sales closing date. Otherwise, it could be rejected by your insurance provider. Coverage is continuous and can be canceled the following crop year, provided you have a written notice to do so. For succeeding years, changes to coverage must be made on or before the sales closing date. So the application includes a coverage plan, county crops, coverage level, price, endorsements, entity type, and other information I talked about, such as social security numbers, person types, SBI information. So plan to spend some time with your agent completing the form. Remember that one mixed box can have a great impact on your coverage. Also remember that November 20th is the deadline for getting your application in. As far as production reporting goes, production reporting date is January 15th. And for production reporting date, you should report by type if that's applicable to your farm. Any event or action that could impact the yield potential, such as interplanting of a perennial crop, any removal of trees, any damage to trees or changes in practice, or any other circumstance that may reduce the expected yield must be reported by January 15th. In addition to the number of bearing trees on insurable and uninsurable acreage, the age of the trees, and the planting pattern, in addition to all of this, you still need to report your yield information. Also on January 15th is the acreage reporting date, where you file a report of your planted acreage with your crop insurance agent. This is involving the number of acres, your share in the acres for each insured crop and county. All right, let's talk a little bit about additional crop information. And I do have one slide on different endorsements that may be available for coverage. All right, so the first one I want to discuss, and it's important that you discuss all this with your crop insurance agent, is the optional coverage for fresh fruit quality adjustment. This is additional protection for loss of quality when apples do not grade US Fancy or better. Any block of apple acreage grown and maintained for processing is not eligible for optional coverage under this option. You need to certify and provide records to support at least 50% of the acreage reported as fresh apples was sold as fresh apples, and of course, one or more of the former recent crop years. Also available is a supplemental coverage option. This is, if elected, I should say, the SCO provides additional coverage for a portion of your underlying crop insurance policy deductible. And of course, I don't want to forget the yield exclusion. This is an APH yield exclusion. It's available in some counties. This allows you to exclude yields in exceptionally bad years from your production history when you calculate yields used to establish your crop insurance coverage. So those are the three additional options you would want to talk to your agent about. All right, let's go into a little bit of crop hail information for tree fruits. When we talk about tree fruits, not only are we discussing apples, but this would be for like peaches and pears also. So unlike federally developed crop insurance coverage, the crop hail insurance is developed and rated and offered by private companies for independent agents to provide to you, the farmer. We here at National Crop Insurance Services develop base policy documents, endorsements, forms, loss adjustment procedures, analytical information, and actuarially developed loss costs for private companies who are members of NCIS. NCIS is the statistical agent for the crop hail industry. Crop hail insurance offerings differ by state, with each state's insurance department acting as a regulator. Unlike federal multi-peril crop insurance, crop hail is a named peril product. It insures against specific provision listed limited causes of damage. Some perils can only be covered if you add an optional endorsement to your policy, and many perils and causes of loss are specifically prohibited. So let's talk about Pennsylvania here. Crop hail coverage is available in Pennsylvania. It's a standard crop hail insurance. It can be purchased at any time early in the crop planting and growing season, or even before planting begins. So coverage under the policy doesn't start until the crop's planted and clearly visible above the ground, and insurance period varies based on rules set by the company you insure with. Although there isn't a set sales closing date as under federal insurance, most companies do stop taking applications for a given crop year in late summer or early fall probably around September 1st. Now, applying for coverage is pretty simple. All you do is complete the application. You don't need to complete a production or acreage report like you would with a federal crop policy. Pennsylvania crop hail policies are for a single crop year. Some companies do provide ways for you to automatically renew without a new application. How much of your insured crop is worth at the time of loss will limit the amount of insurance allowed, so it's best not to overinsure. But you could add coverage during the crop year if no damage is present. This is a great option if your crop is progressing well and you anticipate the value is greater than the amount you initially insured it for. I do want to caution you though, because a company won't cover crops damaged by an insurance peril before you sign up for coverage. In some cases, a company may make an exception if one of their adjusters inspects the crop, or they could find it will or has outgrown the damage. The company could agree in writing to take your application for the previously damaged acres. And I want to make note of this, even though I talk about this, there are still inspection procedures adjusters use to make this sort of determination. Crop hail insurance is available in any Pennsylvania county. Unless the coverage you select has specific provisions requiring otherwise, you do not have to insure all acres of the crop in the county. However, the underwriting data questions on the application will ask you to disclose other acreage. Now, one of the things about crop hail is very simple. Each acre is treated as a separate unit of insurance. You could have damage to 100 acres, 10 acres, or 1 acre, and still have the possibility of an indemnity payment in each scenario because a crop adjuster that would be licensed in Pennsylvania to work crop claims will inspect the crop and determine damage on a per acre basis. So if a loss is due, the payable percent of your coverage, or what we call the liability or limit of insurance, is the damage the adjuster determined minus any policy deductible. So let's take it for example here. If you buy $2,500 per acre on 5 acres of your crop, you have $12,500 of liability. If your policy is an excess 15 policy form, you have a 15% deductible, meaning you will need at least 15% damage before your policy will pay a loss. So if one of your 5 acres is damaged by hail, your loss adjuster finds 25% damage, your payable percent of loss is 10%. So that means the 25% minus the 15% deductible equals the 10% of loss. You'll receive a loss payment of $250. So we get to that by taking the $2,500 that you chose per acre times 0.10%, that equals 250 times the 1 acre. For tree fruits, the crop hail policy perils insured against are as you see on the screen. The damage that's particular to tree fruits or grapes or berries is grade reduction. So if individual fruits are damaged by hail, the policy will cover the reduction in grades using standard grades recommended by the USDA. The policy form or payout schedule identifies the coverage deductible and how a loss is calculated when coverage damage occurs to your insured crop. The availability of different policy forms varies by crop and perils insured. So for tree fruits, we have 2 policy forms that are the excess 15 and the excess 25. So for those policies, your company will not cover loss until the percent of loss per acre exceeds 15 or 25% respectively. The percentage per acre that is then payable is the percent in excess of that 15 or 25%. For example, if you have an excess 25 policy with an adjuster determined 28% loss per acre, that is eligible to receive a 3% per acre loss. So once the loss to any acre exceeds the 15 or 20%, any subsequent loss will only need to meet your company policy's minimum loss provisions, which is normally a 5% minimum. So for details about crop hail policy coverage in Pennsylvania, we do have a crop hail webinar that's available. It was presented in January. It's available on that website. So in that webinar, you'll learn about insurance periods, changing your policy coverage forms, premium rates, calculation formulas, loss activities and duties, and so forth. All right, so as we conclude our webinar today, let's take a brief look at the crop insurance cycle for the federal products. And we're going to go over, remember we had the application process. That deadline is November 20th. And like I said before, it's fairly detailed, so you'll need to spend some time with your crop insurance agent figuring out coverages. Once you figure that out, and if the company determines whether or not to inspect your orchard, coverage will attach. And then next August, I think in August, a billing will be sent to you for payment. During that time, you could have a claim, which you'll have to notify your agent based on the policy guidelines that we discussed during the webinar. And then RMA determines if there's any program changes, and you determine if you wish to renew or cancel, and the whole entire process starts again. So in summary, we advise you to contact a local crop insurance agent before November 20th and discuss coverage for apples. Calculate the coverage and cost to determine the coverage that's right for you. And every single agent has what they call some sort of premium estimator, which they can give you an estimate of your premium and show you liability costs and so forth. And by that time, you also need to complete an application. So that does conclude our webinar this morning. I thank you for your attention, and let us know how we did. You'll be receiving a survey tomorrow, and we appreciate your feedback. Again, thank you for participating, and I hope you enjoyed the Apple webinar.